Hotter, weirder, smarter. Hotter, hotter, weirder, smarter. Smarter. Hotter, weirder, smarter. Hotter, hotter, weirder, smarter. Hey, my name is Dr. Ruby Patterson. Welcome to Hotter, Weirder, Smarter. Today, our guest is Lora Luckenbach.
Howdy.
Welcome to the show, Lora. We're so glad you're here. You flew in all the way from Houston, Texas.
Yep, this morning.
This morning.
Bright and early.
Yeah, but you're a Cali girl at heart. So how does it feel to be back in California?
Houston has its traffic, but when Houston hits traffic, it's stopped. Here, I almost made myself car sick driving out. It's you keep moving, but you move at such different speeds.
Glad you made it all the way out to where I'm living now, too.
Yes, it's beautiful. Holy cow. I had to make a pit stop driving out to your place. I couldn't make it in one go because I was like, rocks! Usually, I audibly gasped when I saw the Vasquez rocks when I came around that corner. So, yeah, you live in a wonderful place.
It's so pretty, and it's funny when you texted me that you arrived, you're like, Ruby, I had to pull over and look at the rocks for just a second. We have to go back tomorrow. I know we have stuff to do today, but like, I have to stop right now.
Yeah, I know. I'm so excited to see you, but rocks.
So I want to talk about what you do, but before we get into all of the wonders of being an operations geologist in the oil and gas business, I want to know what's a personal goal that you're trying to accomplish this year?
You know, we all, especially as women, struggle with is kind of this imposter syndrome and finding our own voice, getting to know ourselves, feeling secure in our own opinions and decisions. And this year, I'm definitely stepping into my independence in a more mindful and focused way. Not necessarily because of what I do or who I'm around. It's just, a natural second guessing myself. And whenever I voice something, I want to be right. I'm afraid of being wrong sometimes. So it's like, okay, well, if I just don't say anything at all, you can't be wrong about it, right? But then, when you do hear somebody else say your idea, it's like, well, darn it, I should have just said that. Like, I was thinking a bit, so feeling more confident to just put it out there without that hesitation and second guessing.
Every time that happens to me, I think of this story of my dad, like way back in the day. He's like, there really should be like this business where people will mail you whatever DVDs of movies that you want. He's like, oh, that would kill. That would be so amazing. And then Netflix came out like a year later. He's like, that was my idea. I had that idea first. And he was super salty about it. It always cracks me up. So I want to talk about what you do because your life is so incredible and so amazing. You are an operations geologist in the oil and gas industry. What does that mean, and what does a day at work look like for you?
So as an operations geologist, I'm focused on the drilling side. I focus on pore pressure modeling. So the tiny holes in rocks is your pore space. If you go outside, you look at a sandstone, those little tiny holes that you may not even see them in a lot of sandstones, they could be occluded, but those little tiny holes that are microscopic is actually where the oil is. So this idea that you just like poke a hole in the ground, you hit a pool or a cavern of underground oil, not a thing. The oil is actually trapped inside those tiny pore spaces, and it moves through those pore spaces through something called porosity and permeability. So the more permeability you have, the more mobility to travel between those pore spaces. So what I do is I model the pressure within those pore spaces such that you can design your drilling fluids program to make sure that as you're drilling your straw, those fluids stay within the formation.
So what happens if the fluids get out of the formation? Isn't that the whole goal, is to get them out of the formation?
Yes, eventually, when you get down to the reservoir and your intended target, which over in Bakersfield, your reservoir can be at the surface in some instances, and that's how you get seeps. My field personally is at about 30,000 feet below sea level.
30,000 feet under sea level.
Yes.
How do you even get down that deep, and how do you even know what you're looking for?
Well, we don't always. It's dark down there. But so my field is offshore. About 7,000 feet of that 30,000 is water depth. The drill ship is sea level. Then you have a riser down to your mud line at about 7,000 feet, and then you continue on.
Mudline is the beginning of the ocean floor
Correct,
package.
correct,
Okay.
seafloor. And at seafloor, and when you're onshore drilling as well, you first set in what's called a conductor. That's kind of your first pipe, and those are like 36 inches. So you actually kind of force that into the ground, because right at sea level, it's basically just mud. So it's very soft sediment. Then you'll do subsequently smaller and smaller, we call it casing, but pipe sizes. And with that, your drill bit gets smaller and smaller down. So when we're at 30,000 feet, our production string is 9 7/8. So your drill bit...
Inches in diameter.
Yeah, inches in diameter. So
Okay.
your drill bit is only about this big. And you see, yeah, it's amazing that we're able to tell exactly where we are. I mean, we have a range of uncertainty, maybe 100, couple hundred feet, if that, depending on where we are. It is pretty spectacular that we're able to know that. But we use all sorts of different tools, which can tell you things like the resistivity of your rock, which is the opposite of conductivity. A very, very common tool is called gamma ray. And so, yeah, you're measuring the radiation off of these rocks.
I want to go back to what you mentioned about sending a tool down these miles and miles of casing.
Yeah, you'll drill your big size hole, then you'll send down casing, then you'll cement that in place, then you'll go in with a smaller bit, go through that, and then you do that until you get 30,000 feet down.
So how long does this process take?
Depending on how many problems you run into. So we recently drilled one well in a month and a half, 2 months. Super fast for an offshore well. And then we had a well that was 9 months to construct it.
And are you living on the offshore platform this entire time?
No, thank goodness.
Okay.
However, the drill crew that does this in offshore Gulf of Mexico, it's typically 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And so you'll have a rotational crew that's exactly what they do. They go out, and in this particular field, it was a drill ship. So we'll take a helicopter, and these fields are 220, 250 miles off the coast of, straight down from Louisiana. So you're almost dead center of the Gulf of Mexico. Whenever I go out there, I love sending like screenshots of a map, Google map. I'm like, I'm in the middle of the ocean.
So the first time you ever had an experience getting into a helicopter heading 200 miles south of Louisiana.
Oh, first off, what
was going on in your mind?
Well, let me tell you, to get in the helicopter, what you have to do,
Okay.
You have to take a class called Hewitt, which is helicopter underwater evacuation training.
Oh, lovely. Like everything that could go wrong.
100%. It's spectacular. And the pinnacle of this course, after they tell you all the things that can go wrong with helicopters, is they put you in this fake helicopter cabin, and it's suspended above a pool, and they drop you in.
Have fun.
You have a full-on 4-point harness, just like you do in the in your helicopter seats. You have to, under your harness, punch out a window, and then swim.
Did you punched out the window?
Yes, I did that. Like, I forget how many times we had to do it because it was so traumatizing. But so they first do it windowless, and you're upright, and they drop you in. That's not too terrible, because you don't have to punch out the window and you're upright. But then they put the windows in. That's a little bit harder. They turn you upside down. So you're upside down strapped in this thing.
It's like SeaWorld.
And they drop you in. And so you're disoriented. You don't know which way you're turning. And you have to make sure that you kind of touch the corner of the window so you can remember your placement. You have to undo your buckle, bust out the window, swim to safety. I can't hold my breath worth shit. So the first time I did it, I was terrified out of my mind. I walked away with seatbelt burns. I was bruised. I actually wore like a turtleneck for like a few days after that because they make you do this training beforehand.
Like, oh baby,
it was rough. The second time, because you have to do it every 4 years for your certification. The second time, not as bad.
Okay.
But that first time was pretty traumatizing.
Oh my god! So when they tell you to bust out the window, are you hitting them with a kapow? Like, how do you actually do it?
You take all the strength you can, and you just one elbow right into the corner.
Whoa. Did you feel safer when you got into the helicopter as a result of that, or were you more nervous?
I did.
Because you were like, what the fuck?
No, I definitely felt more safe.
Okay.
Because a lot of people actually, surprisingly, you survive helicopter crashes. And so if you don't get out, that's the problem. Because many times they're not catastrophic fireballs, and you're not flying as high as you would in a plane. So since you're at a lower altitude, you have a higher chance of actually surviving. In fact, in my first class, there was a guy who had survived a helicopter crash. I was like, I don't know. I feel like if I survived, that'd be one and done. I'd be like, you know what? Thanks, God. I got this.
Bless up. Thank you, God.
Yeah. But
I'm done now.
He was brave enough, and he was getting recertified. And I was like, all right, more power to you.
Wow.
But
he just like came back for more.
Yeah.
After his near-death experience.
Yeah, it was wild. It wasn't with the company I'm working for, thankfully. But yeah, terrifying.
Oh my god. Okay, so you went through this entire training before you even set foot on the offshore platform.
Yes.
And so now you've gone through your Hewitt training. Mm-hmm. You can bust a window out if needed. You know how to get out of this helicopter if needed. If it crashes into the ocean, which is insane.
I know all my survival swimming techniques, latching onto the other survivors.
Wait, by the way, you're also doing this training in like full clothes and boots and everything,
yes,
right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, fully clothed. Yeah, coveralls.
You didn't pack your Frankie's bikini like to go do your Hewitt training?
No, actually the first...
That would be cute though.
I'm trying to think. In my second class, there was a female. But no, the first round, I was the only female, so no.
Of course.
I'm like, nah, I'm good with these coveralls.
Wow. So, like, you said you couldn't hold your breath, but I bet you found, like, some part of you that's like, I will hold my breath longer than
I don't want
all
to
of
die.
you mofos.
That was my thought. I don't want to die, so I'm going to hold my breath.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay, so I want to set the scene. You went through this training. You know how to bust out a window. You are fully equipped with all of the knowledge and brain power and know-how of, like, being an offshore geologist. You've, like, gone through all these, like, training modules, I'm sure, like, for geology and everything else. So you're hopping in the helicopter. What is going on in your mind on your first trip to the platform?
Holy shit, this is the coolest fucking thing I've ever done.
Yeah.
Let me look out the window this entire hour and a half that it's going to take to fly out to the platform. And that's
pure ocean.
Pure ocean. That's what I did the entire time. I looked, and when you're coming off the Gulf, or out of the heliport, and along the shelf, there's tons and tons of old platforms. And so it's really cool. You're looking down at all this old infrastructure. It's like, oh, that's fascinating. And then you can actually see, where the Mississippi River, you see all that turbidity, and you see it start to clearing. And then you actually can see where the continental shelf is starting to drop off. And then you see fewer and fewer platforms. And then, depending on how close you are to the ocean, you can actually see dolphins, and you can see some wildlife. I mean, it kept me entertained, but I also studied rocks, so I'm pretty easily entertained.
Same. Relatable. Yeah, I too am a rock lady. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, so you're in the helicopter.
Yeah.
So if you had to make a montage with a backing track, like what would be the theme song of that montage headed to the offshore platform for the first time?
I'd have to go through the soundtrack of Top Gun.
Okay,
I'd have to
because
figure out which one.
in my head, I was thinking of like, some folks are born silver spoon in hand.
Yes. Oh yeah, some CCR, absolutely,
Red, white, and blue.
absolutely.
This is such a like
Ooh,
fortunate
yes.
son moment for me in my mind. If you like
I hear
cruise
it,
into
yep.
this platform, like, yeah, what?
Oh, absolutely. Especially coming out of our heliports out of Galliano. So yeah, some
Galliano. That
That's-
sounds very like haute couture. It's not.
No, it's not.
What's Galliano?
No. Galliano is a very small bayou town. It is an ecosystem unlike anywhere else I've ever seen.
I know you also are really into. You're an avid outdoors woman. And I know you love to go like fishing and hunting. And so when you were passing over this beautiful landscape, were you like scouting for fish, like new fishing holes?
Oh, so actually offshore fishing is best over by rigs. So,
Oh, how come?
well, you get a ton of like barnacles, filter feeders that attach themselves to the rigs.
Oh.
And so actually, in fact, offshore California, there used to be a program called Rigs to Reefs, where instead of removing that entire ecosystem that's been there since, the 60s, they would lay it down. And I can't remember if they actually did that. They may not have. They may have actually had them completely remove them, unfortunately. But they would lay down the old reef or rig such that, you could have all of this living, and I mean, because it was a reef, that you had all of that growing on that platform. So that attracts fish and whatnot. So you will see fishermen that have nothing to do with industry just hanging out around some of those platforms fishing.
Wow. So not the ones that are 200 miles out, or you are talking about the ones that
No. That's way too. No. If you're that far out, you're committed.
You're a pirate. Okay, so you're taking the highway to the danger zone. To quote your Top Gun soundtrack from earlier. You're in the helicopter, you land on the offshore platform.
Yes.
What is that moment like? Have you been dreaming of this for a long time? Is this something you were like, yeah, okay, I guess this is a natural path for me? Like, what are you feeling?
So the way that I actually knew that as a geologist, I wanted to go into oil and gas, because I had no idea. When I started off, I was actually a chemistry major, and then decided after taking one geology course, holy cow, this is amazing. I'm in college and I get to do field trips. Spectacular.
Where did you go to college?
I did my undergrad at California Lutheran University.
Oh,
Yeah, so right over here.
Yeah.
And then I did my graduate work at Texas A&M.
You need to show your Aggie gold to the camera. Yes, she worked hard for this.
Yes. I definitely did. It was it was a labor of love. But so during my undergrad, I was active in the Southern California Geological Society and met up with somebody who worked for the Minerals Management Service, and they offered me an internship. And actually at first, I was a bit hesitant because I was a silly undergrad and I was like, that's going to be a lot of work. And I don't know, it's real work. Am I ready for real work? And luckily, my professor at the time, Dr. Bilodeau, we called him Dr. B, was like, are you serious? I'm going to sign you up. Absolutely, you need to do this. It's like, okay, what is it? I guess it's oil and gas. I guess I'll check it out. Because, I had no idea. Am I going to go into the Forest Service or, what am I going to do with my geology degree? So I worked for them for a summer and then part-time during the school year. And then in my second summer, I was they invited me to do some inspections on the offshore platforms they're only a few miles off the coast of California. And I got in a helicopter. I didn't have to do Hewitt back then.
Okay.
But I got in the helicopter, and I remember thinking, like, this is amazing. I'm on this helicopter. This is so cool. And as soon as we touched down on the platform, and I can remember this, like, distinctly, and this was probably, I can't remember how many years ago now, but almost 20, maybe? I can't remember. Nah, not that long. But it was a long time ago. And I remember specifically thinking, holy cow, this is what I want for my life. I want to be this excited about my job every single day. And that's exactly what happened. That is why I went into oil and gas. It was because of that moment landing on that platform.
I love that story. So that was your aha moment, like I know exactly what I want to do. This was it. Forest Service, you're cool, but this is for me.
That'll be my backup.
Yeah.
If anything ever happens, I would absolutely do that in a heartbeat. But for now, send me offshore.
So when did you move from California to Texas? Was it for grad school?
Yes.
To go to A&M?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
As soon as I realized that I wanted to do petroleum geology, top school, A&M.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I might be a little biased. Yeah. just a little.
My sister went there and she drank the Kool-Aid too.
Yeah.
Every time we see someone in a 7-Eleven with the Aggie ring on, she's like, whoop, like the Aggie thing. She's like, yeah, gig 'em, look. Yeah, and she'll like stop them and say hi. And I'm like, I'll see you in the car.
Oh, yeah, I make everybody sick. I start all my emails with howdy. And when I introduce myself, I do tend to do that.
You do the howdy? Oh
I do.
My God, I forgot about that. Yeah, so one thing about A&M is you guys ride or die for your school.
100%.
Like the passion is so strong. I do respect that.
Yeah, in fact, that's why I'm involved in recruiting, and I'm also part of a mentorship program that specifically mentors community college students in engineering going to A&M to do a 4-year engineering program there. So yeah, anything A&M related mentoring wise, I'm in.
How do you mentor someone going from a community college setting to A&M? Because that is like getting pushed so far out of the nest in my mind.
It is.
Because I did that jump from community college but to UTSA, UT San Antonio, and I was like, whoa, where am I? This is a whole new galaxy. Like, what's going on?
Well, and a lot of the students that we work with in this program are also, first generation university students. Yeah. So it's a lot of coaching on how to build your resume, but also how to interact in formal business settings, because they're incredibly intelligent. They don't need us for the engineering side of it. It's more of, what does this career actually look like? So actually we'll invite them on campus and we'll show them around the office, and we'll do kind of an interview of a day in the life of with different engineers around the company.
Have you ever had a student do something where you kind of face-palmed internally?
Oh,
like,
100%.
I can't believe they did that.
Yes. This one student, so we were showing around and also showing them kind of the amenities that we have as a company. And so I brought them down to our corporate gym. And mind you, the students are dressed up professionally. I look over and I see one of my students trying to use a squat rack. And I was like, what? And so I run over it. I'm like, we can't do that.
It's leg day, Laura. Leg day waits for no tour, no matter how.
Mind blown. I was like, all right, okay, note to self. We'll need to be a little bit more careful, more mindful.
Wow. Was the rest of the group like, oh shit, should I be doing squats now too? Like,
no, luckily all the other students were kind of like, what's happening? He should not be doing this. Somebody stop him.
In slacks and a button up,
yeah,
dress shoes and everything.
Yeah, wild. Absolutely wild.
Workout companies should make clothes that look like business casual that are actually made from athletic wear. And I would wear that, because I don't want to wear non-flexible clothes in the workplace ever. I need stretch in my clothes is what I'm trying to say.
Well, let me tell you, the best way to wear leggings to work, because I do this quite often, because yes, I like to sit cross-legged at my desk. Heels and a blazer. Nobody knows. Wear a little bit of a longer shirt, so it's not total ass. But yeah, you can pull off leggings in a professional setting if you throw on a nice blazer and heels.
I'm impressed that you actually wear heels to work.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
People get confused. They're like, oh, she looks professional. She's wearing heels. The leggings don't even face them.
She is the consummate professional from the ankles down. I don't even need to examine the rest of her body. Yeah. Well done, Laura. You've cracked the code.
Yeah.
Okay, Laura, you mentioned your field site where you work is 30,000 feet under sea level.
Yes.
How do you even know what's going on in terms of the geology at such a depth?
Well, trying to think of like the actual scale. So it's down 30,000 feet, but then it's also, let's see, an offshore block is like 3 miles by 3 miles. So 9 square miles.
It's humongous.
It's giant. Like almost 5,000 football fields. We've got, with appraisal wells, discovery wells, I think like 19 well bores. So penetrations to our reservoir.
So this is 19 pinpoints of ground truth information, like physical, like samples.
19 over 5,000 football fields.
Okay. So not much.
No.
Okay.
So as a geologist, rocks don't lie. That's I love saying that because, people will talk about utilizing other pieces of data, but no, you give me well data, I will take that to the bank. We also use seismic data, which is incredibly helpful for filling in those gaps.
How do you get seismic data?
So it's actually kind of neat. You have a boat that will tow along these hydrophones you set off a blast, then you basically listen for the rocks on these hydrophones.
The reflections?
Yeah, so you listen to these reflections. And each interface where you have a change in impedance, of course, see the amplitude of these impedance changes, which is your normal seismic volume. But then you can do different types of inversions and calculations with these. And in some shallower fields, you can actually have just an amplitude response. So having a higher amplitude tells you that you have gas there, which is spectacular. It's a bright spot in your data. You know to put a hole there. However, in these deeper fields, not so much. And also, out in the Gulf, we have a very, very thick salt to contend with. So not only are we drilling through, sediments, we're also drilling through, in my case, 10,000 plus feet of salt. And that causes a lot of distortion with your seismic data. And then you can have inclusions within the salt. So this is fascinating. So the salt was underneath all of these formations. In fact, the Luan salt, I can't remember exactly when it was deposited, but it was before the Cretaceous. And so you have your Luan salt, and then overlaying that is, I believe it goes straight to like your Jurassic, Norphlet, Smackover, and then your Cretaceous, Cotton Valley.
What's the ballpark age range of these units? Are we talking like 60 million?
So those guys are like 160 plus. So those guys are old.
That's
old. Yes. But there are reservoirs. So we actually just had first oil at our Norphlet field, which is the Norphlet formation is Aeolian sand dunes. So old sand dunes.
So Aeolian means wind created. Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Wind created. So it actually has a ton of porosity and permeability, despite being I don't remember that field's depth, as I haven't worked that one specifically, but it's deep because it's below my field, and I'm at 30,000 feet. So,
oh my God.
So it's deep. But then you get to the field I work, which is Wilcox Formation. That's closer to 55, 60 million years old.
So tell me more about these inclusions in the Luan salt.
Yes. Okay. So I got distracted. But the salt, it was deposited long before all of these other sediments. But because the way that salt behaves under heat and pressure, it behaves plastically. So it moves through all of these, basically just like squishing a tube of toothpaste. And so it will move through the sediments and try to come up to surface. And in some cases around the Gulf Coast, does. And that's where you have salt domes and whatnot. But as it moves, it'll grab onto sediment and create these sediment inclusions within the salt. So then that actually ties back to my work as an operations geologist. I need to utilize my seismic to make sure that we're drilling through a clean salt and that we don't pop into one of these sediment inclusions. Because if we do, it could be overpressured. It might have hydrocarbon. We don't know what's in it. So we want to avoid it.
So it's like a high pressured potential bomb situation.
Yes.
It could F your shit up, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Wow.
It could 100% screw some stuff up that you don't want to be you don't want to play around with that. So
my God.
we identify those so that we can put the well over here and not through that.
Wow, so these inclusions have to be of a certain size for you to even be able to see it on the resolution of the seismic
Yes.
data that you're getting back. So
Exactly.
these are big,
Massive.
big inclusions.
Massive.
Okay.
So you're talking
Wow.
more than, depending on the depth of it, that your resolution might be 100 feet-ish. So it needs to be
That's
big.
big.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So have you personally done geosteering?
Yes. Yeah. So that is something onshore.
Okay.
And I mean, you actually, there are a handful of offshore fields where they do horizontal drilling, which is fascinating.
Wait, so why do you need to drill horizontal? Okay, first of all, what is geosteering exactly? And then why do you need to drill horizontally through rock instead of just going straight down?
Yeah. So offshore, typically conventional reservoirs. So higher permeability and porosity, which means you've got bigger holes and things can move through the formation easier. You want to drill horizontally when you have tight rock. So our unconventionals. And so these the unconventionals didn't really pop up until the late 2000s, early 2010s, was really getting popular. And that's when we realized that, we can actually extract oil and gas from, all right, I'm talking like nanodarcy perm. So this stuff is like, you gotta have a good microscope to see this shit. Like, sometimes actually our well cement had better permeability than the formation itself. And the way that we got around this...
Hold on. Okay, nanodarcy, as in Darcy's law, as in a measurement of flow through the permeability of the rock. And you're telling me that you guys managed to extract oil from a formation that has less ability to transmit fluid through it than cement, is what that's what I just heard from you.
Yes.
Okay, that's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what kind of rock? What kind of rock is
shale?
This? Shale. Okay, nailed it.
Shale. So
Shale.
mud rocks. There's literally rocks made out of mud. So you think of if you lithify mud, then not a lot goes through mud. Yeah, if you squish mud, you're not getting a lot out of it. But if you drill a horizontal well, and so you have all of that surface area that you then fracture with fracking, you create a ton of surface area, and you do actually extract a decent amount of fluids. Mostly because if you think about how much pressure is down there and how little pressure there is up on the surface, even though there's not a ton of permeability, it still wants to come up to the low pressure area.
Ooh, that's physics, baby.
Yeah, exactly.
The
Basic
beauty
physics.
of physics. That's so sick. Okay, so when you say fracking, you quite literally mean we are fracturing.
We are
the
inducing
rock
fractures
formation,
into the rock.
which allows these hydrocarbons to escape.
Correct.
How do you fracture? Just like high pressured air? Like, what are you doing down there?
So what you do is you'll drill your well. In most cases, you'll case it off. So you'll put your pipe, and then you cement it in place. You'll use these perforation guns. You'll burst holes into the side of the pipe that you just set and cemented. And so you explode the pipe, and you set another plug. You pump high pressure fluid and proppant, and your proppant being, in many cases, just sand that they mine. And so for West Texas, they actually have a bunch of mines where they just pull out loose sand, and then they'll mix that in kind of the slurry with probably like 99% water. And actually, I forget the name of the website, but you can actually look up the constituents of frac fluids that different companies use. But you do have some chemicals in there to like increase viscosity to help keep that proppant in suspension. And you'll high pressure pump that down your well and create it's enough pressure that it creates fractures. Wow. And then that proppant gets in and keeps those fractures open. So that's why you send the sand down there to keep it open.
Because that would have a higher permeability, and that would allow for these fluids to flow through.
You're creating those pathways, creating permeability.
Whoa, yeah. That's so interesting. I have heard of fracking, and I've heard a lot of different things about fracking. I didn't know the actual mechanics of how you perform it. That is really, really badass, actually. Yeah. And all of this is, like, we need to remember, this is all happening miles below the ocean surface. Yeah, miles below the ocean, or typically you do this onshore. So horizontal is typically onshore. So you're, like West Texas, Permian Basin. And those wells typically 10,000 feet below the surface. So that's deep, though. It is deep, yes. And often your fracture half length, so you're talking about like a couple 100 feet. So you don't have a ton of fracture growth. Because it takes, imagine, 10,000 feet down. In some instances, you're talking reservoir pressures of, 15,000 PSI. That's a lot of pressure. It takes a lot of pressure to induce fractures, let alone induce fractures that would make it up to the surface. So it's very unlikely that you have situations like that. What you do have, and where there are issues with fracking, and I will be, very open about this, is the amount of water that it takes to frack a well utilizes a lot of, in many cases, fresh water. In places that are already going through water crises. Yes. Yeah. So some companies, thankfully, like the company I work for, we use 100% recycled frack water. Great. However, that's because we are a large company and we have the money to do so. A lot of smaller independent companies don't, because it's expensive to create the water recycling facility and manage all that. And so you use fresh water. That is very resource intensive. And then what do you do with the water if you don't have the capacity to recycle that water? So is this what's known as produced water? Yes. Is that the lingo in the biz? Yeah. So what are people trying to do with this produced water if they're not able to recycle it? Like, what do you do with it after? They inject it into saltwater disposal wells that, if unchecked, can create induced seismicity. So artificially induced earthquakes. Yep. Okay, yeah. I've heard of this happening in places that have no plate tectonic boundaries, places like Oklahoma. Yeah, there was a huge study done in Oklahoma, very comprehensive, very good study that was done over there about induced seismicity. And that's so, scary. Yeah, it absolutely is that, but that's what happens if you're not taking the time to understand your subsurface and the risks associated with what you're doing. You can have all sorts of unintended consequences. So do you think that this artificial seismicity is a result of people not pre-planning their operations properly, or is this a necessary evil, or is it avoidable? Yeah, absolutely avoidable. Yeah, 100%. Damn, dude. You dispose into a different zone. I mean, that is a very obvious. Yeah, don't dispose into a zone that is already overpressured. Number one, spread out where you're putting these disposal wells. And, unfortunately, it is a difficult thing, because to drill just a disposal well, that's expensive to drill just a hole to throw shit down. So a lot of companies don't want to do that. You can also truck your water away, but that's expensive. And we're talking millions of gallons of water. And so having that flow back and trucking all of that water, that's why there's in West Texas, they have all sorts of
horrible driving incidents is because of all the trucks on the road, and a lot of that is water.
Yeah, every time I've gone to visit my best friend in Midland, Texas, she always texts me, remember, these 18-wheelers are not like 18-wheeler drivers from elsewhere. They are on a mission. They're trying to go fast and loose, and it's a different mentality. Like, it's very, very intense, and it's like this bustling metropolis out in the middle of nowhere, and it's 24/7 truckers.
It is, because all of this, is 24/7 operation. So you'll have people who are just blowing and going. They've got trucks to run, and there are so few people out there. I mean, they're always hurting for people. And so you have people that are just exhausted on the road. It is dangerous.
Something that I am really curious about in terms of the breadth and scope of your career is how have things changed for you personally and technologically since you first got in the oil and gas game?
So I think personally, for me, one of the largest changes is seeing how, not necessarily the culture, because the culture at the company that I work for has always been very safety conscious, environmental stewardship. That's why I chose the company. Seriously, I mean, when you work in the industry, we know the reputation of oil and gas. If I'm going to work for a company, I wanted to make sure that I worked for the company that I felt good about. So that has definitely stayed the same, but I've seen more of an importance placed on diversity in the workforce and also promoting women to leadership positions. I've definitely seen many more positions open up for women, which is great because then it also means more mentors for younger women upcoming. I don't know if I necessarily should say this as a recruiter. The quality of interns that we're bringing in some spectacular women, and the guys need to show up. Like, it is actually really surprising. The women that come for our interviews, they are prepared. It's amazing. We ask them questions. They know what they're doing. And then you get guys, and then they just, like, they expect, oh, well, my family's been in oil and gas. And I'm like, okay, that's great. So if you had this issue, how would you approach it? Well, and they get stumped so easily. Whereas women, I feel like we're just natural problem solvers, so that might play into it. But yeah, so I have seen a very, like, noticeable difference in the amount of women available for mentorship and then also upcoming. So I think we're finally starting to close that gap. There's definitely room to kind of grow in that, but we're on the right trajectory, I think.
That's such a good point you bring up about the differences between some of the candidates that you interview to work at your company. And are you interviewing grad students and undergrad or just undergrad?
So actually, usually it's just grad students, but I just took over the senior recruiting role, and I was like, we need to get these undergrads some practice with interviews. So I started interviewing undergrads as well, which is
like 20.
Wild. The difference between your graduate students and the undergrads. Definitely a significant difference.
You need those years. You need to let your brain cook a little longer.
Yes.
Before you get into the workforce.
Yes, sure. Absolutely. But it is good to, get practice and then also get those younger students on your radar early so that, they have an opportunity to be coached and they feel comfortable coming to you, not necessarily like, oh, hey, I want to work for your company, but having a relationship with them such that you can be a mentor. And if they're asking, hey, yeah, I like oil and gas, but I'm also considering this industry. What do you think? It's nice to be able to help students with that as well.
So you mentioned some of the personal or like interpersonal changes you've seen since you've been in the oil and gas industry, which, by the way, how long have you been working in the industry?
My internship was in, 2011. So good 14 years.
Wow, 1.4 decades.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
that sound really
that
extreme.
Oh, God.
That's
All right.
thousands and thousands of days.
Yes, it is.
Wow. Okay, so I also want to know what types of technological differences have happened in those 14 years. I'm sure it's been insane for
Wild. It is incredible. So if you go back to, the late noughts and
you. The naughties.
yeah, the noughties. That was when, unconventionals were just getting started, and the company I worked for was actually thinking of getting rid of our assets in West Texas, which is where the majority of unconventionals are for us.
Unconventionals, again, meaning
Horizontal wells.
horizontal.
Yeah, in the shale. In the shale. Those harder to get, the wells you gotta frack, those. So they were actually thinking of getting rid of that. Now, that is where I should know this is terrible. But a large portion of our production comes from West Texas. So much so that my best friend, she's a production supervisor, superintendent. Her production for that area is equivalent to all of the business unit offshore. So for the Gulf of Mexico, where I work. So, and that's just her area. So the vast majority is all in unconventionals now.
Damn.
And that was not the case when I first started off.
When did that shift happen? How long into it?
I would say it was only a couple of years. By I think maybe like 2013, 2014 it started off. But a lot of that was driven by the fact onshore, those wells, like 7, 8, 9 million. Whereas offshore, it's about $200 million a well. Vastly different.
My God. We're talking how many billions? How much is...
Yeah.
Oh, talking
exactly.
38
We're talking billions.
$3.8 billion? Is my mathing? Hold on.
On the fly.
200 times 19 would be what? Yeah, that's $3.8 billion.
Yeah, it
just is. To do the drilling.
Just for the wells. That being said, those offshore wells will bring in up to 12,000 barrels a day.
That seems like a lot to me.
It's a lot.
Okay.
As someone who started offshore, when I started working in our offshore business unit, and I was like, how much do we produce a day out of a single well?
Oh my God.
Whereas onshore, you can have wells, especially a lot of smaller companies will make plenty of money off wells doing few hundred barrels a day.
Wow.
And that's a decent amount of money. So for private equity companies, they absolutely run off. Sometimes they call them stripper wells. Stripper because you're stripping whatever's left. Not
sure.
For
yeah. I've been out to an oil town.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of strippers there too.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about what you're exposed to.
The human experience.
Yeah.
They're artists. They're dancers. Just support the arts. So do we here at Hotter, Weirder, Smarter.
But yeah, so you can make a ton of money off of those wells when your costs are very low. So if you put in a well for $7 million, if you only produce a couple hundred barrels a day, that's great. Whereas offshore, to justify $200 million, you got to be pulling a lot more out of the ground.
You need some commas in those numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is fascinating to me because I mean that's a lot of oil coming out of the ground all at once per day. Yeah.
Again, to the scale and scope sentiment I shared earlier, like this takes so much effort, so much energy, so much time, so many people, so much planning, so much money. Like this is so hard to wrap my brain around. Like even you saying like, oh yeah, that's as big as 5,000 football fields. I'm like, Oh my God, like how big is that really? Like you mentioned something to me earlier off camera that it's the same, like how many Central Parks from New York City?
Oh yeah, 3.5. Yeah, 3.5. Yeah, 3.5 Central Parks.
That's so big. That's crazy.
For the field that I work. Yeah, massive.
Dude.
Yeah, the scale of these projects, which, I mean, that's part of the draw. I love engineering, figuring out how things work. Geology is like a puzzle. And you have to figure out, with the little bit of data that you have, so you know these 19 well bores, I've got some pressure data over here, I've got some acoustic data over here, gamma ray resistivity. How can I create the story such that I understand my reservoir and can best decide where to place the next well and how to do so safely? It's so much fun.
So how many people depend on the work that you do?
So if we go back to, I think you had asked a question earlier about what is one of the challenges about my job. One of the main challenges that I don't think a lot of people understand is how many people rely on the work that I do. And it feels really silly to put this much importance on a model that I make. Like, you know, I sit at my computer and I'm making this pore pressure model and I feel important. But at the end of the day, offshore, you can have a crew of 100 to 250 people working offshore. And if I have not provided a pore pressure model that accurately reflects what we expect to encounter, I could be putting them at risk. And that's a like
Wow.
like it is an immense responsibility that, at least at the company that I work, we take it incredibly seriously. And that we have a saying, like, there's always time to do it right, do it safely, or don't do it at all. And anybody at any level can stop you and say, no, whatever you're doing, no, not right now. So when you're offshore, if somebody says, we need to stop, doesn't matter if it is like the bottom of the totem pole, the worm on the rig floor, if it's, you know, me as a well, when I'm acting as a well site offshore, if you say, hey, something feels funky, we stop. And I think that that is so important in, you know, that it's a really risky game out there, you know, when you have all of that. So that is, you know, one of the things that brings me a ton of pride for the work that I do, is knowing that when I put out a quality model, that's what it's impacting. It's impacting that many people. It's keeping that many people safe. It's keeping things from, you know, like Macondo happening. That is, we are the first line of defense as geologists. And people don't think about that. No, you don't think, you're like, oh, cool, you like to lick rocks. You're a geologist. And yes, I get a ton of flack about that. And yes, 100% I lick rocks. Absolutely.
I've seen you do it, actually.
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But I also take myself very seriously, you know, when it comes to work and things like that. You have to balance it. Work and play.
Yeah.
You have to have fun with it.
There's field trip things, and then there's get down to business things. And
Yes.
this is very much like you are locked in.
Yeah,
dialed in.
100%. Because I need to know that my science is grounded. I will stand by the numbers that I provide, such that I feel confident about, you know, keeping people on the rig safe.
Yeah. Something that I'm really curious about, especially as we're seeing AI and machine learning tools become more prevalent in not only your sector, but pretty much every job out there now. What is it like being in an industry that, in my mind, right, and I think in the minds of a lot of people, it's such like an old man's game, Like, at least that's like what we see in the movies about the oil industry. Like,
Oh yeah,
so
you just imagine old men sitting around a table.
how do I print to PDF? Like, they don't know how to print to PDF, and all of a sudden you're like, yeah, just put it in the machine learning model, it'll trace the fault for you, Randy. Like, how is it working in a place where you have like these young people coming up who literally write the code to do these things, and then you've got Randy over there who's like just changing out the coffee filters and trying to learn how to turn on his computer?
Yes, so it is. We're in a weird position because a lot of the new and younger group coming in, they know programming, they know data analysis, they know that, but they're very workflow focused. So you press this button and then you get this result. You take that result, you do this, then you do this. And it doesn't have a lot of outside thought necessarily. It's just workflow driven. Step 1, step 2, step 3. Which is great when everything goes to plan, everything is simple. Cool, that works.
But it never
goes
to
never,
plan.
Absolutely, never goes to plan. And so you need those fundamentals that the old guys are harping on. Like, go back to pen and paper. Where's the tracing table? Like, things like
Are
that.
you serious? I shouldn't even ask if you're serious. I know you're
Yes.
serious.
Yes, I am 100% serious. They're like, trace that map by hand. No, we don't need to do that.
It's the mind-body connection.
Yeah. And I think that, I'm very lucky that I get a little bit of both. So I get to see both sides.
Yeah, you're right in the middle.
Yeah. So I'm like, I see the importance of the fundamentals, like the Tierpock structural geology mapping book that's like our Bible for mapping.
Oh, Tierpock.
Yeah. But for subsurface mapping, he's got the book. But you can only contour on pencil and paper for so long. Like, we don't have it. Like, what are we going to do with digitizing that? No, you can put it in a computer program, and now computer programs can actually do that pretty reasonably. You don't need to use a tracing table. But the fundamentals of knowing the difference between your measured depth versus your true vertical depth. So if you're at an inclination, your measured depth is going to be different than your straight vertical depth.
Are we talking like Pythagorean's theorem math?
Yes, yeah,
Literally,
absolutely.
you have an inclined bed, and you're trying to figure out how
100%.
deep are we in our well, this is the hypotenuse.
Yes.
This top of this dipping layer. This is our.
And that's how you figure it out.
Okay.
Absolutely.
A squared, B squared, C squared, baby.
Yeah, but you get a lot of younger people coming in that might not think that way because they haven't been taught to think that way because...
Well, Claude told them.
So, you've got the older group that doesn't trust technology at all. And then you've got the younger group that technology is truth. You're like, it's somewhere in between. It's gray.
It's nuanced, for sure.
So, yeah, that's definitely a big difference.
Okay, so be honest. How much of your job is translating between the two?
I do see quite a bit.
Yeah.
Because... especially a lot of the managers, they come from that old school of we need production, we need to get wells in the ground, versus yes, we need to get wells in the ground. Let's get the best wells in the ground. How are we going to figure out which are the best? We're going to use some data analysis. We're going to look up all the wells, not just our wells.
I really love how it seems like there's a lot more creative problem solving because you have so much diversity with respect to career stage.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
And type of schooling. Like a lot of times when we talk about diversity, we think of it in terms of like gender differences or like, ethnicities or nationalities or whatever. And there's also a lot of creative problem solving that happens when you have diversity with respect to career stage.
Yeah.
Totally. And it
100%.
Sounds like, I know, and in my mind, I'm thinking, I wonder, like, are you guys more productive now? Like, is this kind of like a new renaissance of the oil industry that you're in the middle of right now?
I do feel like we're much more productive.
That's cool.
I think sometimes it feels like we're dragging our heels. We have so many processes because I work for a large company. we so much red tape, so many processes. Oh my God. But the assurances, we need the assurances. It keeps us in check. it's a good thing. Sometimes I love efficiency, so it's a little painful. But having, the different views coming in, I see a lot of benefit from that.
That's so good to hear. This has been so much fun to talk to you about all these details and all the nitty gritty of what you do and what it's like to be an operations geologist. I learned so much from you. Before you go, every episode we have a segment that since we are hotter, weirder, smarter. Since we are hotter, weirder, smarter, hotter, weirder, smarter, we have a recurring segment where we break it down into hot takes, where I'm going to ask you to share a piping hot take from your industry. We're going to ask a weird truth, like what's something that most people would not know about what you do or about your industry. And then also, please share a smart move. What's something that either has leveled your life up or a tip that you would give to other people who want to potentially get where you're at in your career?
Awesome.
Okay, so Lora, what's your hot take?
Oh, I've got a good one. So working oil and gas, we definitely get a lot of pushback. And I've definitely seen a change in attitude towards oil and gas, even within very pro oil and gas groups. So it used to be really easy to recruit students, especially from Texas A&M. We're one of the top oil and gas schools. We've been struggling to get students, and I think it's because of the reputation that oil and gas has. And my counter to that is join us, make a difference. Like, part of the reason, if anybody had met me before I went into oil and gas, they probably would have never guessed that I would go into something like that. My father worked for the Environmental Protection Agency. He worked remediation. So the complete opposite of oil and gas. My mother did her thesis on some of the coal mines and the work that they were doing out there and the pollution that they were producing. I mean, complete opposite. I grew up in California, so very focused on conservation and being environmental stewards. So why on earth did I go into the petroleum industry? Because I cared and I wanted to make a difference, and I knew that just shaking my finger and yelling at the situation wasn't going to do anything. I needed to educate myself and then get in there and make a difference. I knew that I needed to join a company that had the culture where I could make a difference and where I could actually funnel that energy, and I knew that I would be with like-minded people. And I need other intelligent, motivated people to come join me so that we can actually make differences. We're doing some really cool stuff. And, I feel like I've totally drank the Kool-Aid, but at the same point, like out in the Permian where we've got a bunch of rigs running, we talked about earlier, we recycle our frack water. We also have electrified our rigs, so we're not running diesel generators to drill wells anymore, which is how they typically drill wells. The rigs that you see drilling have massive diesel generators. We've actually hooked up to the electric grid, so we can use different types of energy, natural gas, wind, whatever's on the grid. But also, we've set out our mini solar field that we utilize to help power our drilling rigs.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and nobody talks about that stuff. And the thing is, that came from within. There was no regulation that said you have to do this, because changing legislation, that's great. I am all for regulation, actually. I think that we need to be regulated, absolutely, based on science, reason, logic.
Yeah, earthquakes in Oklahoma alone.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
We should be regulated.
That is science. There is data to support that. Whereas you've got some places, no offense, in California, that are just like, ban fracking because we don't like it.
That's not the whole story.
Yeah, exactly. It's very short-sighted. But we do need some regulations. Like, what are you going to do with the recycled? Are you going to recycle the water? What are you going to do with water treatment? How much water are you going to use? Those things I think that need to be regulated because there's science behind that, and water shortages, there needs to be responsibility. But we need people who are motivated to get in and help us make those changes, because regulations can change depending on who's in office. They can repeal legislation. They can be like, no, do whatever you want. Or, it changes every 4 years. So we can't rely on that to make long-term sustainable changes. We need people who are motivated in the industry to actually do that from within.
To give it longevity, these ideas.
Absolutely. Yeah, because guess what?
Sustain the movement.
People like plastics. Unfortunately, they're not going anywhere. And they don't necessarily need to. But we do need to do it in a more responsible manner. And the only way that we're going to do that on a large scale is with people who are motivated to do so.
There's certainly people that I've heard that are incredibly motivated and climate conscious and earth conscious who are wanting to see these changes being made. But again, you don't ever hear the perspective of, no, join us so you can make it better. That's such a rare thing to hear.
Yeah, because there is a lot of stigma. Because what are you going to tell your friends? Like, yeah, I'm going to go work for, XYZ big giant company. Like, what the hell are you doing? You're going to the dark side. It's like, no, I'm making a difference. I actually am going to change something so that we can do it. Because, it's slower from the outside. You get in on the inside, you can actually make a difference pretty quickly.
Wow, that's a piping hot take, and I love it. That's amazing. I completely agree with you. Wow. Okay, so what is a weird truth about what you do?
I get this so often that people think oil comes from dinosaurs. What if, what amazing movie, the Deepwater Horizon movie, almost everything is very accurate. However, when that dinosaur claw comes across the shakers, it kills me because they were drilling for a Miocene reservoir. It's like,
it pisses
40
me
to
off
50,
too. It pisses me the fuck off.
Some of those Miocene reservoirs are even 30 million years. Dinosaurs died off 60, 70 million years ago.
Everybody knows they were dead by the Miocene.
100%. Everybody knows this. So how do you think oil got there? Not dinosaurs. It's algae. Algae.
That's cool. That's actually really cool.
So weird truth, oil is not 99% not from dinosaurs. Algae, plankton, that kind of material.
That's amazing. And that's why there's so much of it.
Exactly.
It's so abundant. Like, there weren't, herds and herds or flocks and flocks. Like, what do you call a group of dinosaurs? A herd?
Yeah.
What is it? I don't even... A murder? A gaggle of brontosauri?
Well, I mean,
what are they? A herd?
Actually, no, if you think about it, because reptiles ended up being...
A pod?
Birds. So, no, actually, you could have had a murder, depending... I mean...
You could have.
A flock... Think of different types of bird groups. Yeah, no, I think because if you call birds that group, why wouldn't you call dinosaurs that? If that's what the predecessor were,
There's no archaeological evidence of flocks of dinosaurs existing in the amount that you would need to produce the amount of oil
exactly.
Have extracted.
The numbers are just not there.
The math ain't mathin'.
No. Algae, yes. Dinosaurs, no.
Yeah, plus the Miocene, they were all dead by then.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Everything about that movie, besides that, pretty accurate. That, not so much.
Thank you for sharing that. Amazing. Okay, the last portion. Smart move. What would you, and by the way, you can give us as many of these as you want, but what is like at least one smart move that you've made in your career, or what's something that you would recommend doing that's like really savvy, like a life hack?
Say yes. Even when you're not ready to. Even when it's uncomfortable, say yes.
Say yes to what? Exactly?
Any opportunity that comes across your way. Career related. Especially as a geologist, engineer types, we tend to be introverted. It's a lot easier for us to like, no, I'm a little nervous about that. I don't want to do that. But there have been, I would not be where I am today. Absolutely not sitting on this couch with you if I had said no to anything along the way. So, I mean, I can say that about my career. I mean, there are so many instances where I thought, this is something small. I don't really need to go to this networking event. I don't really need to do this. Do I need to spend a weekend with a bunch of geologists I don't know? Biking? I don't even mountain bike. What is this? No, maybe I'll hike around the mountain, which is where I met you. yeah, because you were mountain biking, and I'm like, I'll just hike. But I showed up, and that's what mattered. I showed up. I was able to meet you. Mm-hmm. I'm here now. And you never know what's going to happen when you say yes to something. And it could be small. It could just be, fun. We're sitting on a couch. I got to meet a bunch of new fun people. And that's wonderful. But what is going to come of that? Absolutely nobody. You don't know. That's why you say yes. I mean, this is an amazing experience, and I get to share my experience. People get to hear about my career. I get to talk about rocks, one of my favorite things to do. And it's a good life. You just need to take those opportunities as they come up, and don't be afraid of them.
Wow. Is there ever an opportunity that you've been afraid to say yes to, and then you've said yes?
All of them. I do not like public speaking. I studied rocks for a reason. Rocks aren't going to talk back to me. I'm a natural introvert. So anytime I say yes to something, that means I have to interact with more people. But yeah, you say yes, and then you have these amazing experiences from it. And
like this one right now.
Yeah, 100%. When you're like, do you want to do a podcast? I didn't think. I just said yes. And then afterwards, I was like, shh. What did I get myself into?
You crushed it, baby girl. That's what's up. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you said yes. This has been so much fun, Lora. I wish we could keep talking about all these weird stories of you licking rocks and like getting mad about Deepwater Horizon movies for more hours, but our episode must conclude now.
Well, there's always another time, another chance to say yes.
Yeah, we'd love to have you back. Thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you for having me. This was awesome.
Hotter, weirder, smarter. Hotter, weirder, smarter. Hotter, weirder, smarter. Hotter, weirder, smarter.